What's up, guys? So thank you for joining us today. Eugene and I, we're going to talk about kind of an idea I've been chewing on. And so it's made its rounds through email and things like that. So if you haven't seen it, then maybe it'll be new to you. If not, then if you've already seen the idea, then we'll talk a little bit deeper about it, getting into, just an idea on growth. And I mean, a lot of us in jiu-jitsu, we're always trying to do that. We're trying to improve and stuff like that. So before we get into it, thanks to our sponsors. Big thanks to Ice Barrel. If you guys have ever been interested in doing some of the ice bath stuff that you've probably seen everybody talking about, right? I feel like it's become the thing, right? Not for a bad reason. It's become the thing because there's just so many health benefits from like sauna, from ice baths and things like that, and it can be a really useful tool to add into your recovery. Now, I'll share this with you. The best recovery is making sure that your training is correct, you're getting enough sleep, you're eating correctly. There's all these things. But again, a nice little thing to maybe add onto the top there is an ice barrel. And even from the standpoint of like going through some mentally tough stuff, it's challenging. But anyway, if you guys have ever wanted to do an ice bath, but sometimes or get one for your home, but sometimes the cost can be a bit prohibitive, because again, some of the big tanks and stuff, they can be kind of expensive. I mean, you're looking at like they'll put the it's almost like a car. They'll give you that baseline sticker price, and then you go on their website and you actually look at like if you actually want it to have more functions, price jumps up. The ice barrel you can get right now, which is it's a big, giant, hardy plastic barrel that's deep enough for you to stand in. So if you've ever had to do an ice bath where you're like having to get in there and it's all like, you're kind of scrunched up, or maybe if you've got an ice bath of some sort that doesn't drain out very easy, anything like that, then it can be a really cool tool to add into it. And it's actually nice. Looks good.
Yeah, it looks nice.
It's not just like some ugly tub that has to sit out there on your back porch or whatever. But if you want to get one, you can go to their website at icebarrel.com/Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU, and you'll get a discount. And if you use the discount on that page, you'll get it's right now, the time of recording this could change later on. It's just over $1,000. So just letting you know how much it is just right out of the gate, which again is a fraction of the cost for most of the ice baths. And we'll be doing a video of it soon that you'll probably find on Instagram, where we're going to give it a little test run and stuff like that. I've done plenty of ice baths in the past, and I think I really like it. And so they're giving us one of theirs. And so we're going to take it for a test run. But if you guys want to check out their stuff, go to icebarrel.com/Jiu-Jitsu to get the details on their ice barrel. And we'll give you more details as we play around with it ourselves. Also, thanks to Charlotte's Web. If you guys have never tried CBD before, I always encourage people to give it a try. It's a great supplement to throw into the mix and to test out. It does a lot of different things, and again, there's evidence always coming out, and there's always more stuff being studied. But anecdotally, you hear from a lot of times people, there's a lot of the same things, like it helps maintain healthy sleep cycles, managing, just everyday stress that people come across. And a lot of times it can be very useful for recovery from exercise-induced inflammation. So when you're getting in there and training, doing a lot of jiu-jitsu, lifting weights, things like that, it's just another thing to add into the mix for your recovery. I personally like taking CBD at night before bed. It's part of my nighttime sleep ritual. It helps seems to help wind me down a little bit. I know Eugene, I know you take it a little bit during the day as well to kind of just sort of stay a little bit more even kill. And so again, I encourage you guys to play around with it and try it. And again, if you do get some of their CBD from Charlotte's Web, their website, try it out and be consistent with it for a month. You know what I mean? Really see what the effects are going to be, and then kind of go from there. And if you guys want to check out their supplements, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. And then the promo code for that is Chewjitsu20. So it's CHEWJITSU 20. You get 20% off the order on some, high quality CBD. And again, whether if you've used or if you've heard this or not, I just like to let people know they have the regular CBD stuff that everybody knows and loves and everything else. They also have a daily sports edge, which can be a great supplement for people who have to get tested. Again, there's a threshold of like different metabolites that you can have in your bloodstream. So check out their website and look into the Daily Sports Edge. If you're someone that gets tested, it could be a really useful way to use CBD, but at the same time, not test positive. Again, I don't know what kind of test you have to do, so do your research. But they fall under the category where if like you were tested by USADA would say that this supplement is good to go and that it's safe to use. And so you can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll for helping support the podcast. Matt's been a longtime sponsor with this company, Epic Roll. If you guys have never been to their website, I encourage you, I give you a little bearded nudge to go to their website at epicrollbjj.com. Tons of nice stuff, tons of cool stuff, good, high quality stuff. I just wore his Nogi shorts this morning, which is most of the time if I'm doing Nogi, and most of them I'm wearing his stuff. I've got a few other companies that I like, but again, his makes up the lion's share of my gear, whether it's his actual stuff or my Jiu-Jitsu branded stuff. But again, if you guys have never been to his website, he has a lot of cool designs, high quality stuff, and it has my bearded seal of approval. So check him out at epicrollbjj.com. Whether you're looking for a gi, rash guards, t-shirts, shorts, anything and everything for jiu-jitsu, epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped.com is the website. Again, if you guys have never checked out Manscaped before, I'm sure you've heard about them. They're kind of everywhere right now. They are the premier men's grooming company. They have everything from trimmers. They started off originally, I think it was like a ball thing. It was like trim your balls. Everything was about balls, right? And which again, I was pretty like, I didn't really want to talk about that, but they do make a good ball trimmer.
Such a prude you are.
I know, right? I'm a product of my times. But, you know, they've come out with all these different products since then. And most recently, they came out with a beard trimmer. So the beard trimmer is pretty cool. So it has an adjustable guard on it, which I think is pretty handy if you guys have ever had to trim your beard. And a lot of times you understand you have different lengths you don't just trim your beard with one length. You have to trim it slightly different lengths, shorter in certain areas, longer in others, most of the time if you want it to be kind of shaped up. And then you have to change those guards out and everything else. It's kind of a pain. Well, their beard trimmer is just an adjustable guard. And again, it's wireless. So it's nice. It's wireless. You don't have to have a cord or cordless. I guess you say cordless. Wireless makes it sound like it's like a phone or something, but cordless. But
I get it. I know.
You know what I'm saying? It's cordless.
Still the same thing. It does not have a wire. So I think both definitions apply.
But it's a good product. And so everything I've used from Manscaped has been like premium quality stuff. It works really well. I've always been impressed with it, and the beard trimmer was no different. And again, so if you guys are a man or you know a man in your life that would like some of the stuff that Manscaped has, check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order, and you get free shipping. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Upon joining, you'll get access to an exclusive library of content that we've been collecting and building up for several years. It has interviews with different guests that we've had on the podcast. In fact, every guest we've had on the podcast is an interview. There's also things like narrated rolls. There's things such as seminar recordings that are on there, as well as warm-up routines and stretching routines that Eugene's put together. And again, you get access to all of it by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you would like to join my daily email newsletter, you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you go to the website, you put in your email address, sign up, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks that'll help you with your jiu-jitsu training, and then you'll get my daily email newsletter. And again, at that point, you can read it with the other thousands of people that read it every day. And if for some reason you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe and you can keep those ebooks for yourself as is. And so check it out at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. So guys, let's get into this idea today. So it was just something that I was thinking about when I was up. I don't know why I was thinking about it, but it popped into my head during a trip this weekend. I think it's because, you have time driving and you're kind of sitting around a little bit longer. Your mind has time to wander. Mm-hmm. And I was up with my student who was competing up in Ohio this past weekend. And, when I was younger, I used to get this whole idea of self-improvement wrong. Self-development. When you think of self-development, you think of self-growth, right? Where personal growth, personal development. Mm-hmm. I used to get it only half right, half correct, which is I would always look to be adding something good to what I was doing, right? So a lot of times you're trying to add positive habits, good habits that are in alignment with where you want to go. I'm trying to, I was trying to do these different things. But the idea that I came across, and I wrote this post. So the post said, Quote, personal growth goes hand in hand with personal decay, as certain aspects of yourself must die away to allow the better version of you to surface. So, with Joseph Campbell, he has an idea of the snake shedding its skin, and we can
Mhm.
think of that as a way that, the old version of us is being shed away as a new version of us is emerging. And what does this have to do with jiu-jitsu training, which is what most of you guys kind of follow, right? I think this is an idea that's useful everywhere. And I think jiu-jitsu kind of gives you a place to mess around with it a little bit. But you can just think about it, right? Like I have people that come into jiu-jitsu that are trying to find the new supplement. They're trying to, use TRT. They're trying to find some hack or take an ice bath or whatever, but then they drink every night or they don't sleep enough or they eat a terrible diet. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's one of those things where, okay, like you've got to get rid of that old stuff. Like we can add all kinds of great new stuff in it, but that old stuff's still going to hold you back because ultimately when you think about it, you are your habits. You are what you do every day. You are your beliefs. All these things, you are a collection of all these different things that make up who you are right now. Your beliefs, your ideas, the things that you say to yourself over and over again every day, your habits that you do, those make up who you are. So if you're trying to become someone different, which is really what we're all trying to do, it's not about learning the technique. It's not about just like doing the thing. It's about becoming someone different. You and I both, when we were white belts and we were like getting better, and then now we can feel like we're black belts, we understand that it wasn't just learning a bunch of techniques. We became a whole different person on the other end. I
Mhm.
know that when I was younger, I really struggled with a lot of self-limiting beliefs, bad habits that weren't in alignment with where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be on or off the mats. And so it wasn't until I could come back and address those that I could really move forward. And I think that a lot of times we're all looking for that thing, that next thing to do in order to improve. And a lot of times we're looking outward at something that we need to add into it, right? We need to add this thing into it. I need to add this particular version of training or way of training. I need to add this particular supplement into it. But in a lot of cases, I feel like, at least for me, there's a lot of room for improvement by looking at what are you doing right now? What do you believe right now? What are the habits that you engage in right now and all that stuff, and begin to sort of allow those things to die away so that you can begin to make progress towards that person that you're trying to become. Because again, as I said before, I think that's really what we're after. We
Mhm.
might think that we want this new technique or whatever, but those new techniques, those new things we practice, those versions of training and everything else, all that's really doing is turning us into a new person and the person that we want to be, which can accomplish the things that we want to accomplish, right?
Yeah, and you can't do all the techniques. You can't learn all the techniques as well. Sometimes you have to find whether it's let's talk jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
In jujitsu, it's like I train probably 3 days a week.
Yep.
I am limited in my time. I have to figure out where is best to. And some days, man, like I feel like yesterday was one of those days. I just didn't have it. I just like did not feel like I had it. And you have to take it for what it is and
Mm-hmm.
and focus on what you can do and like not try to implement so many new things. Like if you're someone like me, like a hobbyist, really, that you train a couple days a week, you got to focus on what you're doing and maybe let things go. You can't just keep adding on new stuff. You can't like add a completely different technique that doesn't even play into your game at all. You have to add something that's complements your game, or maybe get rid of stuff and start, focusing on something completely different. But I think it's hard to get rid of things too. I think we
Mm-hmm.
hang on to things, whether it's jujitsu techniques that don't
Mm-hmm.
work for us, or relationships that don't work for
Sure.
us, or habits that don't work for us. All those things um, are. It's just hard to do that, and I think for all of us, it's different. We have different reasons that we hang on to things, whether it's an identity that we had. Um, the one thing, like I just thought of Napoleon Dynamite, Uncle
Mm-hmm.
Rico was like, I was his quarterback, and like, no, you're not that anymore. Who are you
Yeah.
now? Like, you
I
got to
was
become
quarterback
something
back in
different.
high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of like, you have certain amount of bandwidth in your life, like in your time, you have 24 hours, right? What are you going to do to make the most of it? And we can talk about that from jujitsu techniques to, like you said, supplementation or getting the most out of your body. But how do you do that? How do you spread that out and how do you make the decisions? It's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah, and I think about it this way, like when we're engaged in activities, we're going through physical and mental transformations, right? So for instance, like let's say that you want to get better. We'll stick with jiu-jitsu for a second. If you want to get better with an armbar, it's not just like what like we'll say we got to get really good at that technique. What exactly does that mean? Right? That means that you're making these neurological connections in your body. You're developing certain muscles that have to be able to be quick and quick to fire, right? It's like you're doing a physical transformation, right? And you have to transform yourself into a new person who can then do those particular techniques, right? Like when I do jiu-jitsu now, so much of it is on autopilot. I've been doing it for so long that like I fight grips and I don't even think about fighting grips. They're just happening because my body's done it for so long. And so I've transformed myself, my body into something that's wired for jiu-jitsu. Even the muscular imbalances that I have that actually aid me to be a better grappler, right? It makes it worse for me on a day-to-day basis necessarily, right? Because it's not better for long-term health necessarily. You do some maintenance to help offset it, but at the same time, like a lot of these things allow for like a tighter squeeze. I have more isometric strength in certain areas where I can squeeze and hold and push a little bit longer. And I've transformed myself into a different person. When I was younger, I remember when I would compete and I had a hardcore self-limiting belief, right? It was hard for me to imagine myself being a winner, right? Because I was a fat kid growing up. I didn't have a lot of confidence. I got picked on, I got bullied, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing this thing, I started getting better, started winning. And as I'm winning, I'm like, well, maybe I can, right? Maybe I can be. But it continuously would come up even as a black belt. I was like, man, I'm a black belt now. And like, I don't know if I'm going to be a black belt champion. How am I going to do that? Those self-limiting beliefs are tough, right? I think sometimes the biggest thing that we struggle with is our beliefs. We get wrapped up into a way of thinking that maybe doesn't serve us very well. This is why you can have people, the same thing can happen to like two people, and some people respond to it and it makes them better, and the other person responds to it and it crushes them, right? And it's like the same situation. It's just one person has a different belief system. And so I think about that stuff because again, I could not be the person that I am had I not my beliefs not changed. And again, it's like you're engaged in these activities, these techniques, these trainings, these competitions or whatever. And what you're doing is you're transforming yourself. We think of techniques as, and even like mindsets almost as something outside ourselves, right? Like, oh, I need this new technique. I did this technique, but it's like the technique is you only really start to use it if your body's ready for it. Right. Because you could take someone, I could show them how to do an arm bar picture perfect. And I could even get them down to the point where they can memorize it and they could regurgitate it, but they couldn't use that arm bar against a black belt. Right. Not for years to come because their body has not been transformed into that situation. They have not become a person that can do an arm bar. And it's even like when you think about, I even think about, say, from the business aspect. Now, like if you had taken me, say in 2010, when I had all these big dreams and goals, when I first started doing this stuff full time, and you transported that person and put them into my shoes now, they would know what to do. Like, I mean, they would be like, I would be like my old former self from 2010 would be crushed in a day. I keep up a pretty fast paced schedule. I deal with a lot of stuff that would be very stressful to most people. And again, it would just be tough. But over the time, you become used to it. You develop that callus, so to speak, where you develop the hardiness to deal with all these different things coming at you. And you become the kind of person that can maintain that schedule and deal with those things. And I think that that's ultimately what we're looking at. And so you got to look at your habits and you look at the things that you engage in. And, you got to ask yourself, are these going to help me become the person that I want to be? Rather than like, again, looking at something that's going to help you like just like some little trick or something like that to get a short-term victory. It's like, no, we're trying to transform ourselves. And I think that's really the essence of, to me, what's important. And so then you have to go back and look at what am I doing right now? And are these things going to be in alignment with where I'm trying to go to? Right.
Yeah. So the self-limiting beliefs is something I've always struggled with. I continue to struggle with. And I
think, right?
I've thought about it and I'm wondering why, like, even on jiu-jitsu mats, sometimes you'll have like, you're going against a black belt. It's like, man, they're a black belt. They're going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of doubt yourself and you almost like set yourself up for failure. And I think we have the I'm trying to figure out why I have self-limiting beliefs, or why we as humans do.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it makes it easier to fail or to accept failure. It doesn't hurt as bad, because if we set it up to where, oh, I already expected to fail, so it's just happening what I thought was going to happen. Well, it's easier to accept that versus like you put all your eggs in that one basket and you believe in yourself and you give it everything you got, and then you actually fail. I think it hurts a lot worse if you truly believe that you're going to win and you don't, versus like you're like, well, I'm kind of preparing myself for failure, and if it happens, then see, I was right, kind of thing. So that's just my opinion, and I don't know, and something I've worked on and continue to work on all the time. Every time I'm on the jiu-jitsu mats, I'm doing that, and so it's a struggle for sure.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with being realistic about the what can really happen, because like one of the worst things that you can do is you can go into, let's say, a jiu-jitsu match or anything that you do in life, right, that requires a little bit of competition, and go into it like it's a surefire thing. And then you go into it and it's not a surefire thing, and you go into it and all of a sudden it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you get a big letdown, right? That's a problem. Opposed to like, like even like when I compete, I'll look at it and I'm like, okay, like I can lose. I can 100% lose. So I've got to respect my opponent and be ready for him. Opposed to, like I said, if I go in there and I like get cocky, and I have done it before, and I go in there and just expect to win and I get smashed for it. So I think it's good to have a healthy respect of your opponents and a healthy respect of the situation, to
Yeah.
know that you could lose. It's a possibility. There's nothing
Absolutely.
surefire, right?
Absolutely.
But at the same time, then you can go the other direction where you're like, this guy's going to kill me,
Uh-huh.
where you're not even giving yourself a chance.
Yeah, you may see them and like they're jacked and they're huge and they look athletic and they're like, oh man, I'm in for it. And it could be totally, it could be a totally different scenario, but that it can be a deceiving thing. And I think you have to I think you do have to be confident in what you're bringing to the table and just your skill set and believe in yourself. But yeah, like those self-limiting beliefs, something it's one of those things where for me, it's focusing on what I can control and what I can't. I think that's one way I kind of can keep those things at bay. I just having a game plan, for example, in a tournament, or making sure that you're conditioned or you drilled enough, or you're supplementing or eating properly and doing the things like we talked about. You're not like finding the next hack or the next supplement per se, but you're like, am I doing the right things on a daily basis consistently? And that's kind of where it becomes, where you really find the improvement. And I think sometimes being consistent isn't always exciting. It's kind of boring, but the ability to do those things, I mean, you can enjoy like I enjoy jiu-jitsu, and being consistent in jiu-jitsu is enjoyable. What some people may not be consistent at, well, eating well, or not, or limiting their alcohol, kind of thing. That's just kind of, there's certain things that it's easy to be consistent because we love it, and certain things that aren't. And I think you got to take it both ways. You put that towards both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be consistent if you think about what the end result is, right? Because again, like jiu-jitsu can be difficult, but we go in because we know we're going to enjoy it. We know there's a benefit. Talking about the ice bath, which we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
Ice baths like suck. Like, I mean, you get into them and your body's like, oh, I don't want to do this. But when you get out of an ice bath, like you feel great. Like your body feels good. You're like, oh, that was great. You have this feeling across your body as the blood's coming back. Sometimes I'll go lift weights in the morning, and again, it sucks in the morning, but I'm get up and do it because I feel better afterwards. And even eating consistently with good food. Like, someone was asking me one time about my diet, and I'm like, I posted my diet on YouTube. It's the same diet. I just eat more food and less food depending on if I'm trying to lose or gain weight. And again, like there it is for you. I mean, it's not complicated. It's not that complicated. There's no, like, you don't need a crazy hack. And I think that's, you see this stuff where people like, you'll have people that'll get onto social media and they'll be touting some crazy diet of some sort, and then they're like making people believe that that's the secret. Like this stuff isn't that complicated. I mean, you go around enough people and you'll see that there's some similarities. And a lot of times those similarities are really, really boring, right? The similarities, that the habits that they share are very boring, you know. And again, it's not exciting. It is what it is. You know, I mean, that's like one thing that I don't know why, but that's one thing that I appreciate about myself. Like when I was younger, when I would go around some of the older fellas that for whatever reason I took a liking to, that became mentors for me, I would watch them, and I would like, as like a little kid, and just watch what they did, what kind of things they did, how they spent their money, like, you know, all this kind of stuff, all these little things. And then I was like, well, I need to mimic that because those guys have it going on, you know. Like one of my mentors, Al, I remember, you know, I knew he was very wealthy. And then I remember going to his house the first time, and it was a very normal house. You know, I mean, it was a decent sized home. It was in a good area, but it wasn't like you weren't walking into like, you know, MTV Cribs or anything. And he drove a very normal car. Like nothing about this man would basically tell you that he was a very wealthy guy. But I was like, that's that. And I would ask him why. He's like, well, he's like, I want to send my kids to private school and I don't want them to have debt. So that car that I didn't buy, well, that's their school. And then he was like, you know, and that money that I was spent to do that, well, that goes into this investment. It's going to go make me money. Like, oh, this seems like a way better idea than all like the people that I know that are just wasting their money buying stuff that they're poor. They're basically stuff poor. Got it. Okay, let me mimic that. You know what I mean? Or you get around guys who are super intelligent, and you know, you're like talking to them, and then you find out they basically just sit down in a damn chair and read books for hours at a time. It's not sexy. You're sitting down in a chair reading a book. Not, you know, you're not skimming it, you're just reading it. You put your phone away and you read. It's not very sexy. When you look at high level jiu-jitsu guys, they drill a lot, they train a lot. And a lot of times that training is not sexy. It's situational training. It's drilling where it's just repetitions. It's nothing that, I guess, if you maybe like make the camera angles all fast and add some music to it, maybe it'll be interesting to watch. But otherwise, it's very boring. But a lot of times it's that boring stuff that's transforming that person into the kind of person that can do the things that they want to do. You know what I mean? And again, that's where I go back. It's not just about doing the things. It's in the becoming that really matters. You know, you can't just say, I want to like reach this goal, right? You just can't say, well, I want to win first place. You have to become the kind of person that can win first place. You know, you can't be like, well, I want to make, you know, I don't know what a number is. I want to make $500,000. You got to become the kind of person that can make $500,000, you know? And so again, I think those are important. And that's where I think it goes back to the habits and the things that we're doing. And again, when you think about that, you have to shed away a lot of the stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that holds all of us back. If we really think about it, and sometimes it's not fun to like sort of have that admittance to yourself that you have all these things that you're hanging on to that are keeping you stuck where you're at right now.
Yeah, I think that's takes a lot of introspective work, and it's painful a little bit because you have to find your flaws. You have to actually tell yourself or not prove, but you have to be honest with yourself that you aren't this perfect thing or person, that you have these flaws, that you have to address them. And that's also difficult to do because we have to, you know, really look at ourselves and let certain things go, and maybe even double down on other things. And that's hard for a lot of people. It's hard for everyone.
It's hard for everyone. I don't think anybody, even if you're used to doing it, it's not fun when you like discover something new. You're like, yeah, it's not too good. You know,
why did I do that? Why do I continue to do that? Right? Like some habits make us feel good. You know, it may not be in the right way. Like, oh, I feel good after, you know, you may feel good maybe in the short term, but you're not thinking long term. Well, that alcohol, I feel pretty good when I'm a little drunk, a little tipsy, but then afterwards you're paying for it. You can't train, or your body feels like crap, or you're like drowsy or whatever. You have a headache. So it's like, I think when you were talking about those mentors that you had, their outlook was different than a lot of ours. We can see what's in front of us. Their outlook was way ahead. They're looking way ahead into what they want to accomplish.
Well, and I mean, some of that stuff is okay, right? I mean, like sure. Again, there's things where if you make a conscious decision to do something, that's completely okay. As long as you're making that conscious decision. I think that's one of the things that's maybe Maybe it's like from wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I don't know. But something that I started doing in my early 20s, because, well, so we'll rewind a little bit. So in my early 20s, I had what at the time seemed like a really terrible thing happen, but it was something that actually ended up being very useful. At the time, I think it was around 22, and had bought a house, bought a car, had a dog, was working 40 to 60 hours a week. Um, and I had aligned myself with what the woman that had been with for several years, what she wanted, right? And I was trying to be the man. I was like, all right, I'm going to make the money. I'm going to work so she can go to school, and I'm going to buy all this stuff. And I was basically stuff poor. So one day, the relationship had some weird red flags that I just didn't really pick up on or chose to ignore. But eventually I found out that she had been cheating on me and seeing a person that she had met on EverQuest. For anybody that doesn't know EverQuest, just think like World of Warcraft, online video game, that kind of thing, right? So she was seeing some person that she met on EverQuest. And I remember when I found out, I was super pissed, because while I was out there friggin' like putting in hours working, trying to support her, there's like a friggin' paladin trying to get into her panties, right? So like, I was just like, oh man. So anyway, eventually I told her to, you get your stuff and you get out of the house. And she did. And she took her stuff, which was all the furniture, and she got out of the house. And basically there was a futon mattress, and that was about it. About all I had at the time. And so, because she had bought all the furniture. And so that was a pretty empty time. I was like, man, like, what the hell am I doing? And then during this period of like kind of going through this to figure out what's next, where do I want to go next? I got very intentional about, okay, I completely sidetracked myself from the goals that I thought was important, because from a young age, I wanted to fight MMA and I wanted to get into jiu-jitsu, because I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing with it, but this is where I want to go. But instead I had started accumulating all this stuff, because in society, that's what they tell us is really important, right? Is your stuff that you get.
Yeah.
When in reality, it doesn't matter. It's your communities are important. There's a certain level of money that in productivity that I think is going to be useful. But your communities that you're a part of, the people, your family, your friends, those things are far more important. And your health, those things are far more important. But at the time, so I sat down and I wrote about it, and I sort of came up with this game plan. This is where I wanted to go. And from that point on, I became very intentional about what I was doing and what I got myself into, because I was like, I had to be, because I was like, I saw what happened when I wasn't. You get pulled in whatever direction that society or someone else wants to, instead of moving on your own path by design. And so like when I got into relationships with women after that, I would be very intentional about saying, hey, listen, I hope that you are cool with this, and because I'm going to do this, and you can't get me to not do this.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to have to, it's a sort of a package. You have to accept me for doing this thing. A lot of women would eventually say yes. And then as soon as they got into it, they're like, you train too much. And it's like, well,
yeah,
goodbye. And again, no harm, no foul. We're just not right for each other. And then even with the things that I get into habit wise, like, okay, like for instance, I didn't own a TV until 2021. I haven't owned one since I was in like my 20s. I was like, why? Because I was like, well, I'd rather spend my time reading books, because I feel like to go where I want to go, that's what I need to do. Now I have one now for like fights, and occasionally Jess and I will watch a show now.
Yeah.
But again, it was a very purposeful thing. Even when like I buy a car now, I don't buy a car unless I can buy it cash. I don't want a payment. Yep. I'd rather buy a less expensive car that's maybe not as nice than have to friggin' buy a brand new car and be friggin' paying a car payment all the time. I just don't want to, because and again, I don't like cars. If I really liked cars, maybe there would be a difference, but I'd rather spend that money on things that I find more enjoyable, or things that I find more important. Yeah. Again, that's my decision. And then when it comes to training and eating and things like that, okay, I'd like to look this way with my body. Well, I should probably eat this way. Yeah. I want to do this in this way. Okay. And I want to be productive tomorrow. I probably shouldn't drink too much tonight. I'm always thinking about like the decision I make has an outcome. Is that outcome what I would like to be? And maybe that sounds kind of, what's the word? Tiresome to some people, but again, it's like,
That's what it takes, though.
Well, and again, it's not that bad because it's like you're just making decisions based upon what you want to happen. And I think it's a really beautiful way to do things because you become intentional and you have a life that's in by your design rather than it just happening to you and you just going along for the ride. You kind of get to design the ride for yourself.
Yeah. Let me ask you, maybe I can answer this question myself. I was just thinking about it. For yourself, what do you think was one of the most beneficial habits for your jujitsu? What's maybe one habit that you developed that was really helpful? And then maybe one habit that you got rid of that was really a big hindrance to your progression or your growth in jujitsu?
Mm. So probably a habit or mindset that was really a big hindrance. Probably the biggest hindrance early on was that I would treat almost every role like a competition. Problem with that is that for obvious reasons, I couldn't really explore too much. I couldn't try new things and do new things because I was like, I gotta win. And that really held me back for several years as a purple belt, blue belt, purple belt time, where I had these skills that I could be trying, but instead I was just doing the same old stuff, and every time I rolled with someone, I'd get furious if I lost. And it gradually got better, brown belt and up into black belt.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the biggest hindrances. As far as habits go to improve, it's hard to say because there's a lot of things, but maybe one that kind of goes counter to that is that I would always have different games and techniques that I'm trying to work on. So if I'm rolling with someone hard, I have a particular type of game that I play. And then I have my sort of B game that I'm trying new stuff all the time. Like where I'm like, okay, I saw this move. Let me try this out. I'm going to purposely put myself into positions to
Uh-huh.
try to make this happen. Like right now, I'm trying to hit this leg lock counter, and I've been putting myself into positions where I'm giving people my leg just so I can try this counter. You know what I mean? Just to try
Uh-huh.
to hit it during rolling over and over again. And so that's a great habit. I get caught and messed up for doing it sometimes, but I know that I'm making progress. And I think that's a really good habit is to always have at least one thing that you're working on because people will sometimes have this thing and we're all guilty of it. Am I getting any better? Well, how do you know? Well, if you've been working on something specific and you notice it's getting easier and easier. Otherwise, you don't really know. You're just like, I'm rolling with someone. And again, if Bob has a good day today and you don't have a good day, you might lose. And, that might give you the wrong sense of that you're getting worse or whatever. Bob just had a good day. But if you know that you're working on a specific technique and you're getting better at using it, you're identifying it, you're seeing the opportunity to use it faster, that gives you a really clear idea as to whether you're getting better. And you can almost measure that to some
Yeah.
degree, so you can feel that a little bit more opposed to just blankly rolling and just going through the motions and just seeing what happens.
Yeah. I think for me, like, the amount of training that I can do, it's sticking with the technique that I'm trying to work on, not just like doing it while we're doing it during the week. And then we go on to something else. I still try to implement it in, and still go for it and practice it a little bit more. So I think that's for me. Cause sometimes I was like, I've got my game that I know I've got, that's pretty good, pretty solid. I'm going to, learn this stuff for the week, but I'm going to go on and go back to doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you just realize once you do that, you delve into that space, and like you said, put yourself in some positions where you're not the best, or you're more vulnerable, or may get submitted more often. I think you just kind of, because it's with people you trust, and you kind of, it's more of a play, it's a game in that aspect. Leg locks is one thing for me. Like I started, like in the morning classes that I would teach, and also go into some of the 6 a.m. classes. One of my training partners, Jeff, who's also a black belt, he really dove into it, and I could see his progress. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to kind of, so me and him would get in leg entanglements, and we just work. And I think that was super helpful to my game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think like the positional training is really helpful as well. And
Sure.
doing that and putting yourself in those positions that maybe you're not the best in, and consistently working those. You and Brandon did that the other day. You all started in mount or something. I saw you all over there working, just some bad spots that you may not end up in quite frequently. But when
Sure.
but if you do, you're gonna know how to get out of it. I think it's valuable there to really do things that are challenging.
Yeah, it becomes super important as a higher belt too, to make sure you're doing something to put yourself in bad positions because it's very easy, during rolling, if you're one of the higher belts in your gym, to not allow yourself to get put in really bad
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah.
And then, if you roll with a higher level belt who then puts you in a bad spot, you're going to be in bad shape. This is like when I went to my seminar in Tucson. The day before the seminar, we did open mat, and I rolled with everybody. And a lot of times what I'll do when I roll at a gym is I'll actually let people pass my guard,
Uh-huh.
and I'll just let them put me in a bad spot, and then I'll work out of it. And then I'll sort of put some offense forward. But I just like to see what I can do, how I can counter them, and what kind of attacks this particular gym uses, because you'll start to feel a particular style from it.
Yeah.
And I can be like, oh, they use this move, whatever. And a lot of times I'll use the open mat as kind of an idea or a way to sort of decide how I'm going to weave in my techniques to this gym's style.
Uh-huh.
And so, I like putting myself in bad positions with people. And sometimes like people throw different things at you weren't expecting, you know what I mean? But it's fun though. And again, I think that, that happens again once you can sort of let go of the need to feel validated that you're good at jiu-jitsu by winning every match. And you can win matches when you want to turn that mode on. And then you can lose them when you're just playing around. I mean, because again, like I've won plenty of tournaments, I've done great at tournaments, but again, at the same time, I can turn that on and I can turn that off, and it doesn't need to be on all the time. It just doesn't need to be. Maybe if I was 20 and I was training with a bunch of 20-year-olds that are all just battling it out, and maybe whatever, but I don't think it's the most useful mindset for growth and exploration and sort of discovering what's going to be useful for you.
Yeah, I think the idea we could come back to is the idea of play and being able to play and move around and kind of get in positions that you're maybe not comfortable in or not used to, and working techniques that you're not comfortable with or not used to. I think that the idea of play is so important. I mean, I think like I see it with my kids and stuff, and the value of how they learn through play, having
That's their
enough time
base way of learning.
It is. It's like because what happens is you don't even realize you're learning. That's the thing, because you're not trying to learn. You're actually learning through just feel and movement and exploration, because you're not like, I am learning this thing. And sometimes that can be helpful, but sometimes it can be a hindrance because you get so focused on the mechanical nature of your movements that you don't allow your body to kind of integrate itself into the technique and kind of feel the technique out.
Well, that's like a lot of times people will go into the gym and they'll want to they want to like, I want to get better. I want progress, right?
Yeah.
And they'll be doing like some rolling or something from a position or whatever it might be. And maybe they didn't hit the technique, but they got time in that position. You're getting better whether you know it or not. Because again, a lot of the getting better at jiu-jitsu has to do with muscle memory, like these neurological connections, developing muscles that don't get used. I mean, because again, when you think about it, when you get a really good armbar, right? If you, like, let's say, for instance, if you've been doing arm bars for 10 years, okay, and you've got a friggin' nasty arm bar, there is no way for you to have that arm bar on the first day, the second day, even the first year. Why? Well, because think about it. It takes a long time to develop all these muscles that are going to be used for it. And so, like, for instance, like my ability to pinch my knees tight together when I catch an arm lock, holy crap! I've got like the Suzanne Summers thigh master thighs, bro. I can squeeze my legs together so freaking tight that if an arm or leg gets stuck into it, I'm like, yeah, I'm attached to it. I couldn't do that when I was younger. Those muscles weren't that strong. It's like a baby. Why can't a baby just pick up a cup and just drink it? And not because they don't have the dexterity and the strength in their body.
Yeah.
Right. So we think of jiu-jitsu as this technical, this intellectual thing. But a lot of times you're like wiring your body for that activity.
Yep.
And there's no way to circumvent that process to just like, all right, it's done, right? Like you learn something intellectually and now you can do, well, maybe if you're really good, but more than likely, if you are not good from that area, you're going to have to do a lot of work physically to get used to that position and everything else to sort of allow those like sort of intellectual concepts that you're holding to actually be usable.
Yeah. And you have to let go. Like we talked about, you let certain things die off, like certain expectations, maybe.
Sure.
Or certain desires to win this roll or this round. And even taking the losses, you still get benefit from the loss as well. We were doing passing, guard passing, pass defend, standing passing, all that stuff. And You realize where you're susceptible to getting passed, and where maybe for me, you know, I like to pass low. And so for me, it was a lot harder to force myself to do standing passes, although standing passes are extremely effective and beneficial. For me, it was like, all right, I got work to do in these areas. And you find yourself wanting to go back to what you're comfortable with, but it's also having the right environment of like just kind of a pass defend round, for example, allows you to kind of like reset in the same position and get your reps in, which I think is very helpful. And
Well,
it's just a great way that I learned.
well, and you just said something that made me think about like something like letting go of something, letting go of like expectations for yourself in certain
Have to.
situations. Well, and that was like probably like going back to me, like the one of the things that I struggled with was that expectation that I had to, because I was X belt, I was purple belt or whatever, that I was always supposed to beat these people, that I beat Bob yesterday, that I'm always supposed to beat Bob. And, you know, I had these expectations, and that was something I had to let go of, and it had to die away in order to allow me to get better. Because I remember one of the things that happened around purple belt was that I got worse for a while. As I started to play with new stuff that was underdeveloped, there was a period where I got worse. And that couldn't have happened without the expectations being let go of, right? But then what happened was then all of a sudden, as soon as I like started to get the hang of everything, my game shot up because I gave myself a much, it's almost like if you think about it this way, if we have a building and the building has a rather like narrow foundation, its height's going to be very limited, right? It can only
Sure.
get so tall. So if you want the building to be able to get taller and taller, what do you got to do? You got to expand that foundation. You got to make it a little bit wider. We got a wider foundation, we can get the building to go taller. And so as my sort of foundation of jiu-jitsu, the skills that I knew became wider, I had a higher ceiling of skill that I could get. And so that wouldn't have happened had I been stuck with the expectation of that I'm always supposed to win. So
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this. We'll end on this. Some habits. We talked about habits for jujitsu. Let's talk about habits for life. Like maybe that's improved maybe your success in business, or
okay.
success in a happier life, whatever you want to say. What's a habit maybe that you've developed that's been really beneficial to like improving your quality of your life, and then maybe one that you've gotten rid of, as far as like that maybe wasn't serving you.
I think time spent in solitude, not isolation. There's a difference, right? Isolation, I'm isolating myself from people.
Yeah.
Solitude is like, think of like Superman going into his fortress of solitude to recharge. And in those periods of time, going through and really getting down to like what I think, what I want to happen, right? Like, you know, and spending time on me, right? Getting away from all the stimulus, including your phone. You know, write in a journal, ask yourself deep questions about what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Go for a long walk, lift some weights, do something, and then like try to think about what's happening in front of you. That's one that I've always sort of done. It's been very useful, and I still do that. Anytime I've got something challenging, I need time to get away to sort of chew on the idea, chew on what's going on, and try to like figure things out. And I think another thing too is trying to like a habit is trying to listen more. I know that a lot of times, like when we're doing these videos, I'm just constantly. But whenever I'm like around people and they're talking, I try to listen. Again, I still talk a lot. I just have a big mouth, but I try to listen to people deeply. And then if I'm in a conversation, I try to hear them out and see where they're coming from and just sort of see what they're saying rather than simply a lot of times if you watch people in conversation, they're just waiting for the other person to stop talking so they can start talking, opposed to like asking that person further questions like, how do you mean? Tell me more, you know, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And it gives you a better read on what people are actually saying. This has been useful when I do the questions, right?
Sure.
This has been useful in business relationships. This has been useful in my personal relationships and friendships and, you know, romantic relationships. You know, because a lot of times, like when someone says one thing, you know, you need more information and you don't want to just start right there. So you need to ask more questions to draw more of it out. And I know that's very simple, but I mean, I could probably go on forever, right? But that's something that's been useful is like asking lots of questions, which again, I know it sounds so stupid, but a lot of people don't do it. And then finding time for myself away from everyone where I can, you know, and again, you can input whatever you find useful, journaling, exercise or lifting weights or long walk, spending time in nature, just doing something to get into your own head because again, you have to practice some level of self leadership, self influence, right? You have to be able to like take a step back and lead yourself. And again, you can't lead yourself if you're being led by everything else around you. If you're watching the news cycle and you're getting pissy about everything that's going on and never taking a step back to think about it. If all of a sudden you have all these problems coming to you from work and you're just being led astray by it because you're becoming emotional, or in your relationships, something happens and you're too quick to react, having some time to go backwards and just be by yourself to self-govern, self-leadership, right? To practice it, self-leadership. It's very important. And again, I don't think you can be a leader to yourself if you're allowing the world and society around you to just pull you one way or this way or that way, without you taking a step back to say, hey, where do I want to go?
Yeah. Getting your own. I think for me, I did start journaling more consistently, and it's just a way to kind of be with your thoughts a little bit, figure out where you stand, and it's also a way to get stuff off your chest and even game plan a little bit. Like, what do I want? Where do I want to accomplish, or what do I not want to happen? So I think it's just a good way, because it allows you to be a little bit more present with the situation. Sure. Just kind of keep going, from one thing to the next. Allows you to sit with it. So I agree. Yeah, I think that's something that's been helpful for me.
It's just like having a conversation with yourself. It's like having a person to talk with that's yourself, and then you just go through the idea and figure things out. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. I mean, if you have a big, I remember like when I sat down when I was in my early 20s, I wrote a journal. Again, I started writing in a journal because all the people that I knew that were doing pretty well in life, they all had journals. They all talk about it. It's like, okay, well, I guess I got to write in a journal because that's what these guys are doing, right? I don't know how to journal, but seems like it's a good idea. And I remember I simply just wrote in there one day, I was like, where do I want to go? ? And then I started writing about what I would like to do in life. I even started doodling. I remember I wrote this little doodle of me, like, which I have terrible, like, I can't draw to save my life. So it was this like monstrous, like looking picture of me on the top of a podium. And I had like a little picture of the gym with lots of people in it, things like that, and, you wrote just sort of like visualizing the things that were important to me. Yeah. But again, it was just basically asking myself a question. And I think, again, it goes back to that. Like, I don't think people ask themselves enough, like, what do you want? Right. Even like people that come into jiu-jitsu, they do this thing where they come in and they like, what, I want to train and I want to be a great hobbyist. I want to enjoy this thing for my own journey. And then they come in and they get ultra friggin' competitive. And they all of a sudden they want to try to, how can I train to beat that 25-year-old kid who's trying to be a world champion who trains 6 days a week? Well, you're not going to. It's not in the cards, right? Yep. Why are you here? It's not to chase that guy. That's a different goal. You said you came in here for this. Stick with that. That's your goal. That's your place. And again, that's where we start to lose track of like, and you got to be very careful. You get into something and all of a sudden you lose track of like, why are you here? What is your goal? Right. What do you want out of this whole thing? Right.
I hear you. Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard not to want to ascend to it's not saying you don't want to be better. You want to be better. You want to improve. But like comparing someone like that when you're like a 40-year-old white belt to a purple belt world champion is just not the same. You're not comparing. You're both doing jiu-jitsu, but you have to understand there's levels to jiu-jitsu. There's levels, and they're very vast. They're vast at every belt level. I mean, like you got purple belts that can beat black belts, and then you got purple belts that sometimes can get beat by white belts. I mean, there's so many levels to this game. That's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu and the creativeness of jiu-jitsu, the uniqueness of everybody's styles and like body types and how they play the game and what they do, and then also why you're there, right? You got people that are there to be world champion, or people are there to get in better shape, to recover from maybe or overcome like a bad life situation or build some confidence. So it's just it's a cool thing, and knowing your why and your reason, that's going to change as well. And being able to let go of possibly you came into jiu-jitsu with one set of expectations and now you're able to let go of those, and you're going to a different season of your life. Like me, I'm going to be 40. So like, what's my reason for jiu-jitsu now, as opposed to when I was 25 years old
Mhm.
and trying to maybe build a little confidence in myself, right? Give myself a little bit of a way to defend myself so I wouldn't be so freaked out if I ever got in an altercation kind of thing. Now it's about community for me and
Sure.
teaching and being around people I enjoy their company. So
Yeah, and so to do that, you have to keep that internal compass like
yeah.
oriented properly,
Yeah.
right? So you think about like when you get into situations, let's say if you're lost, right? What do you got to do? You got to orient your compass
Yep.
so you can say, okay, where am I going? Well, basically, if you all of a sudden get thrown off and you start chasing other people's goals that really aren't that important to you,
Yeah.
it's essentially like you've got that compass like off its orientation and you're just
Yep.
going the wrong damn direction. You got to like take a step back, say, where am I trying to go? Remind yourself of that. And again, that's where the idea of having some time to yourself can be very useful, which again was also a habit that I knew from several of my mentors. They'd always get space to themselves. And it was always a habit they had. So I was like, that must be a good idea. I guess I need to do that too.
For sure.
All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. And again, if you guys have, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard something about ice baths. You may take ice baths on some regular basis. And again, you know the benefits of them. But if you've never taken an ice bath, it's a pretty cool experience. And again, we've got a new sponsor with us, which is a company called Ice Barrel. If you guys have never checked out Ice Barrel and you're someone that's wanting to get into taking ice baths regularly, maybe you've been listening to Andrew Huberman talk about them, maybe you've heard Joe Rogan, Wim Hof, whatever. I think ice baths have become a really, really popular thing for a lot of different reasons because they've obviously we've done a lot more scientific research about them to figure out what's exactly going on. And there seems to be all these myriad of benefits. And if you've ever done an ice bath, you'll know that when you're done doing it, you feel amazing for pretty much the rest of the day. Like that was like one of the things where I remember doing a breathwork seminar type thing. And then right after the breathwork, we jumped into the ice bath. And I remember in the ice bath, you're in there and I did 2 bouts of 3 minutes with like a little bit of break in between. And I remember afterwards, like, you know, your body just feels different for the rest of the day. You're buzzing around, you know, you feel almost like you feel good.
Charged up.
You do, you feel very charged up and almost maybe even happy or something. I don't know how else to explain it. And you know, because of that, I like doing ice baths on a regular basis. But you know, sometimes setting up a ice bath type of setup at your home can either be really cumbersome or it can be really expensive. Like at home, like maybe you find like a kiddie pool of some sort, or you find some like really, like I've seen people do them in like trash cans and stuff, you know. And again, sometimes it's not either. You probably don't want to have a trash can to go jump into on your back porch. And also too, maybe it's not the most sanitary thing, but Ice Barrel is, if you want to think about all the different offerings that are out there, they're one of the least cost prohibitive options that you have. And it looks nice. So you can, I know one of my buddies, Paul, he has his right on his back porch. He has his little ice barrel set there, it has a little lid. And during the wintertime, he was jumping in that thing every day and the water was staying cold in the wintertime. And then in the summer, you can simply add some ice into it. And then the bottom of it, if you ever have to get rid of it, you can it has a little, what is that? A little spout.
Yep.
And if you can hook up a hose to that. So if you need to drain it away from the home, just hook up the hose and boom, there you go. And so it's very convenient. It's cost effective for what it is. And again, you can check it out at their website at icebarrel.com. And if you'd like to receive a discount on it, you can do it at icebarrel.com/Jiu-Jitsu, and that'll give you a discount on the Ice Barrel and let you start taking some ice baths at home and see what all the fuss is about. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. Again, kind of go along with recovery. CBD is a really amazing product, and Charlotte's Web makes a premium CBD product. Again, things that it can help you with can be really useful for recovery from exercise-induced inflammation, can help maintain healthy sleep cycles, and help some people manage everyday stresses. And again, it's a really good product. CBD is a really good company that makes a good pure product where whatever is on the back of that label is what is actually in that product, which is important when you're talking about a product like CBD, which is not regulated. So again, there can be all kinds of stuff in there. And again, I know that they are doing lots of tests and stuff to try to push for regulation because, they're trying to do it the right way. So I think they're looking for that long term. But if you guys want to check out some of their products, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. And again, that'll support the podcast and get you a good product at a nice discount. Also, thanks to our buddy Matt at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you're looking for a new jiu-jitsu gi, some rash guards and shorts to roll in, t-shirt, some hoodies, I mean, whatever jiu-jitsu related you're looking for, Matt has it as his website. He has good quality stuff. I like the designs that he has. And again, if you guys have never been there, I encourage you to just get on his website and go browse around. EpicRollBJJ.com. And then if you decide that you like something, you want to buy it, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off the order. Also, guys, thanks to Manscaped. If you guys are a man, or if you have a man in your life that needs to step up their grooming game, they can do so with the premier products that Manscaped offers. So again, I've talked about this multiple times. I was so reluctant to bring them on as a sponsor initially. Just because, again, it's like the products were initially focused around trimming up your ball hairs, which it just, I mean, it's like it's something we all do, but it's not something you really want to talk about. You know, like,
how's your ball hair trimming going?
You know, like okay? me and Eugene don't go up to each other and say, "Hey, man, how's your ball hair trimming been going?"
It's going good. Actually.
Like, I've never gone to Eugene and said, "Hey," like I've never gone to another man and said, "Hey, man, what kind of ball hair trimmer do you use?" You know, like it's like you just don't think about it. But they sent the product. I was like, tried it out. I was like, damn, man, this is actually a pretty good product.
Pretty good.
It's a pretty good product. So I was like, all right, we'll offer it. And a lot of you guys actually have taken advantage of it. And so tons of you guys have sent me receipts. So like, all right, I'm stepping up my game. Here we go.
That's cool.
But that said, too, along with it, they've got a lot of other products now. And so they've got everything from colognes and soaps and beard oils and balms and everything else. And they recently came out with like it's like a whole beard kit, but they also got the trimmer.
Yeah.
And again, the trimmer is super nice. I really like it. Like I had my old like corded trimmer that I used to use for everything. And it's really only purpose of this time was to trim up my beard because it had guards on it.
Yeah.
And then now like I don't need it anymore. So I've got that one. And again, it's nice because technically you could use it, do whatever you want, but it's got this adjustable guard. So as you're going through, instead of having to swap off the guards or anything else, you just flip it has this little dial. You just move the dial up or down, boom, you've got it either longer or shorter, and you can trim your beard up. Again, I typically go shorter on the sides. We go a little bit thicker down here in the bottom, and we just kind of bring it down a little bit to a point. And again, that's I've been shaping my beard up with that sucker. Again, good products. So if you guys want to check out any of their products to scape up your man.
Scape up your man.
There
you go. They're gonna steal it.
That's right.
Trademark that.
You can check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code for the offer is Jiu-Jitsu20. That'll save you 20% off the order. You'll get free shipping, and it helps support the podcast. And also, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And when you join, you'll get access to an exclusive library of content we've been creating for the last 3+ years, with everything from interviews with every one of our guests to narrated roles to seminar recordings from different seminars I've done to talking videos very similar to my YouTube ones, to Eugene showing some stretching and warm-up type stuff specifically for jiu-jitsu. It is a lot, and you get it for a very affordable price at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, if you want to join my daily email, it's almost daily, my almost daily newsletter, you can do so by going to my website at jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks that'll help you with your jiu-jitsu drilling, game planning, that kind of thing. And you'll get my daily email newsletter. From there, you can enjoy it like the thousands of others that do. And at any point, you can unsubscribe. So guys, I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.